Hi, and welcome to our podcast, Conversations with B'nai B'rith. I'm CEO Dan Mariaschin. My interview today features the creative forces behind the new documentary, Shari and Lamb Chop, a detailed look at the brilliant life and career of Jewish-American ventriloquist and puppeteer Shari Lewis. But first, if you enjoy the program, subscribe to Conversations with B'nai B'rith wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a rating. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook for all of our latest content. Documentary cinema continues to explore the stories behind the characters and creators of beloved children's programming. Recent films like Won't You Be My Neighbor, Butterfly in the Sky, and Street Gang have all examined the legacies of public broadcasting giants from Mr. Rogers to LeVar Burton to Jim Henson. But that list wouldn't be complete without legendary Jewish ventriloquist Shari Lewis and the adored puppets of the Shari Lewis Show and Lamb Chop's Play Along. Lewis, with warmth and reverence for kids, changed the face of children's television forever, even before Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street. In her new biographical documentary, Shari and Lamb Chop, director Lisa D'Appolito, one of my guests today, pays tribute to Lewis, a trailblazing female performer whose exceptional talents as a ventriloquist, puppeteer, children's entertainer, television show host, and so much more earned her 12 Emmy Awards, a Peabody Award, and even the Dor L'Dor Award of B'nai B'rith. The film includes a range of interviewees from magician David Copperfield to comedian Sarah Sherman to Shari's daughter, Mallory Lewis, my other guest on this episode. I'm fortunate today to have both Lisa and Mallory with me to discuss Shari and Lamb Chop and the filmmaking process and to reflect on the life, the legacy, and the enduring cultural impact of Shari Lewis, a Jewish-American icon and one of the greatest, but sometimes overlooked, children's performers ever. Lisa D'Appolito is an Emmy-nominated producer and director. Her film documentary, Love, Gilda, was selected as the opening night film of the Tribeca Film Festival, had a broadcast premiere on CNN, and was nominated for 2 Creative Emmys. Lisa started as an actress in film, theater, and television, including a part in Goodfellas. She went on to producing and directing and advertising, eventually launching her own production company, Three Faces Films. And in 2018, she was named one of Variety's 10 documentarians to watch. After her mother's passing in 1998, Mallory Lewis began performing with Lamb Chop, entertaining audiences worldwide in venues like state fairs, cruise ships, and military bases. Now a social media sensation with over 300,000 followers and millions of views, Mallory and Lamb Chop are celebrating over 25 years together with 3 popular shows: A Very Lamb Chop Holiday, the Shari Lewis and Lamb Chop Legacy Show, and a Lamb Chop Celebration. Lisa, Mallory, thank you for being here today. We're happy that both of you are joining us.
It is our pleasure. Lisa, I need to talk to you about Goodfellas. I didn't know that about you.
I'm very popular at Italian weddings, I have to say.
Okay. I will never watch that movie the same way again, now that I know you were in it. Lisa, I'd like to start with you. Your documentary work prior to Shari and Lamb Chop includes a film about Gilda Radner called Love, Gilda. What inspired you to make movies about these very talented women who are remembered really as pioneers in their respective fields? And did you watch Shari as a child? And might that have impacted your decision to lead this particular project?
Well, I love comedians and I love unsung heroes. And I think so much of who these, the similarity between Gilda and Shari is they're beloved. There's something about both of them. I mean, you hear the name Lamb Chop, you hear Shari Lewis, you hear Gilda Radner. And if you remember any of them, it just touches your heart. So those are the films that I love to make. So with Shari, I was between the 2 generations of kids who watched Shari. Like, I didn't watch her in her early shows, the Shari Lewis Play Along that were Shari Lewis show in the early 60s, and I didn't watch her in Lamb Chop's Play Along in the 90s. I knew Shari and Lamb Chop more from their performances on Hollywood Squares, Shari's interviews, and of course, I always love Lamb Chop, like just love Lamb Chop. And I think once I started learning about who Shari was and the magical childhood she had and her huge career, to me, Shari is number one, a comedian. And I think that no one thinks about her that way. And I think she is so amazingly talented. And that's one of the things that's coming out of the film is people have no idea who Shari is. They think she's just a children's performer, but she's so much more than that. So that's kind of was my impetus. The more I learned about Shari, the more I fell in love with her.
Mallory, I'm curious to know, how did you cross paths with Lisa? And how did you know she was the right person to help share your mother's story? Talk to us about your collaboration. I'd also like to hear from both of you on this. So, Mallory, why don't you go first and then Lisa?
We had a production deal, and the estate did. And the people that we were in business with said, hey, we have this great director in New York we'd love you to meet. And I was going to Chicago that coming weekend. So I live in Malibu, California. So Chicago is halfway to New York as far as I'm concerned. So I said, why don't I just keep going instead of coming home and I'll meet her. So I get to New York and I go out with two of my cousins who are very bad influences. And I did not end up Googling Lisa as I had planned that night. I blame cousin Jocelyn. And the next morning when I met her, I said, tell me something about you that Google doesn't know, which was my way of covering up for the fact that I had not done my homework. And Lisa told me that her parents had died while she was pregnant. And my mother died while I was pregnant. And we both sort of teared up, and I just knew that I could trust my mother's legacy in Lisa's hands. And that was what was important to me.
And Lisa?
I think for me, meeting Mallory, it was an instant, I felt really comfortable. And then she took out Lamb Chop, which was so incredibly magical. So I feel like Lamb Chop was the final say.
Of course, I was the final say. Hello, Lisa. Hello.
Hey.
Dan.
Welcome, Lamb Chop.
Thank you, Lisa. It is so good to see you, sweetheart.
I know I miss you. I miss you both.
Yeah, I know who you miss, Lisa. It's okay.
Hello, Dan.
Hi, Lamb Chop. It's an honor to have you with us.
I know.
Lamb Chop. Sorry.
It is an honor to be here. I just want to say to everybody who is out there that I am a very proud Jew.
Well, we're proud of you and proud of Shari and proud that you could join us today on the program.
Thank you. I'm not great.
You're not great.
Well, I have another question for you, Mallory, and even Lamb Chop. You're welcome to pitch in here. How did you collaborate with Lisa in terms of offering suggestions, sharing insights into Shari's persona that only maybe you knew, or perhaps if there's archival material? How did you?
You
how
mind
did you
if
do
I
that?
take this one?
Go right ahead.
Okay. I had a very large, I have a storage container filled with my detritus from my mother's life, and I don't have a shrine room in my house. So it was mushed into this storage container. And Lisa came over, and I don't like the storage containers. They make me very uncomfortable because they make me kind of sad because they had all of Mom's stuff in there. Lisa, on the other hand, was picking through it the way I can't even describe it. She is such a documentarian. She is so interested in the minutia. So I set up an easy up tent for her and a table, and she spent days and days and days going through these very dusty storage containers. She stayed at my house that week, and she would come in and we would hose her off because there were spiders and dirt and everything out there. And then we would sit around telling stories, or I would sit around telling stories. And Lisa would ask questions. And between the process of going through the containers and Lisa's questions, and really the fact that Lisa and I just bonded. And so I was super comfortable sharing my life. And it's funny because there were people at the production company who kept asking questions, trying to get dirt. And there was just no dirt on my mom. I mean, she was just really hardworking and really smart and really focused. And she was a good mom. So Lisa never tried to create drama where there was no drama. Everybody's life has a certain amount of drama in it. Just you can't live and not have experiences. And Lisa just was great.
Lisa, did you find all you needed in those big storage boxes?
No, it's a combination of a lot of things. I mean, there were also tapes in there. So in the film, there's Shari's first television show that's Facts and Fun that there's not a copy of anywhere around. So there was a lot in there. I mean, movies made up of so many different things. It's made up of interviews. It's made up of archival. Shari's, Mallory introduced me to Todd, who was Shari's assistant. And I went to Oregon and went through his garage. And in there, we found some tapes that were pretty amazing of some behind the scenes tapes that he had filmed, including Shari's last time singing her last song on her set. So it's like a discovery. And then when you go into the edit, we have an amazing editor, Andrea, who just loved Shari's messages and the messages that Shari had through her singing, and also how Shari would actually, say things through her puppets that she didn't feel comfortable saying. So it's like a collaboration of getting to know Mallory and the family, doing my own research and then going into the edit. So it takes a lot to sort of reconstruct, I think, somebody's life that you've never met and do it in a way that's entertaining to an audience.
Well, a great rule of thumb, I think, for documentary making. I mean, many documentaries, not of course all documentaries, are about the lives of people, or the history of a moment, or an epoch or an era where you weren't there, you weren't born. Mm-hmm. So to reconstruct all of that is a challenge, and it seems that your rule of thumb here of all the bases that you touched has produced this successful film. Now, Shari Lewis brought joy to generations of children and touched millions of lives from 1957 until she passed away in 1998. How, Mallory, did Judaism influence her, and how did she weave Jewish themes into her performance?
We are not a religious family. We are a family of atheists. But I do not see any conflict between being an atheist and being a Jew. I mean, I was raised very firmly to understand my Jewishness. I am of the belief that it is a race, not just a belief system. That's why we have our own disease, thank you, of which I am a carrier. But Mom felt very proud of being Jewish. And that's why she did the Passover and the Hanukkah special. It was before anyone else did a show for kids on Passover and Hanukkah and Judaism. So although we are not a religious family, we are firmly and proudly Jewish.
Yeah, and I remember the holiday programs were extremely important. I know that later on there have been several that have been done, but in those days there really wasn't very much out there around holiday time for us. Nope. Occasionally on the eve of a holiday, the anchor on the TV news might say, Happy Hanukkah to our Jewish friends and viewers and so forth, but there really weren't programs. So this was really groundbreaking. Now, I know that Shari could act, she could sing, she could dance, in addition to being a talented ventriloquist. Where did she grow up, and how did she get her start? Many fans might not be aware of her family history and her show business background.
My grandpa was Peter Pan the Magic Man, the official magician for the city of New York. He was a professor at the yeshiva, and he took magic as a way to teach math and as a way to tame the bad boys and to give them something that made them feel good about themselves. He raised Mom in a world of vaudeville. Although Mom was after vaudeville, my grandfather's friends were old vaudeville performers, and they taught Mom how to do ventriloquism, how to juggle, how to swallow fire, how to do all the weird little vaudevillian arts. And she integrated all of that. And what ended up being what made her so beloved was the creation of Lamb Chop, obviously. And Lamb Chop's play along is really a manifestation of my grandfather's life. He would send my mom on the back of cocktail napkins, on the inside of a matchbook, little jokes or games or suggestions, and she would throw them all in a box. And when Lamb Chop's play along came to be, she and I sat down and we went through the box finding good ideas. Now, Charlie Horse Music Pizza, the subsequent series, was an homage to my grandmother's life. My grandma was the head of music for the Bronx schools, and Charlie Horse Music Pizza was all about music. So that my mom grew up in a wonderful world of magic and music.
So she came by it naturally.
She did.
As a
Honestly,
result
at
of
any rate.
her family background. Lisa, talk to us about how you use the archival footage in a range of interviewees, including Mallory, to paint a complete and a complex portrait of Shari, really a three-dimensional portrait.
In some ways, I was spoiled by Gilda because Gilda Radner left behind her diaries and she left behind these audio tapes. So with Shari, it was really looking very closely at her performances and at her interviews. And I think there was one interview that actually we got from Mallory's storage unit, which we use a lot in the film, where the interviewer asked Shari, who is the real Shari Lewis? And I think that in some ways, the person who interviewed her, and I'm sorry, I can't remember his name right now, I think they were friends. And I think he was able to get to the real Shari, to me, that I saw. So it was sort of painting a picture of everything. Shari also had so many messages, her messages through her songs, to believe in yourself, to be the best that you can be. And, Shari had also a really long career. So there was so much. So it was very easy to fall into the fun stuff and a little harder to get into the deeper stuff because it was so much fun.
If I can just, initially, I did not think that Lisa was using, I would have done a different movie. Now, what's interesting is it wouldn't have been as good as the one Lisa did, but it would have had more songs in it and more fun in it. But it wouldn't have been a documentary. What Lisa did that was so interesting was she really painted an accurate portrait of my mother as a highly successful woman with her own production company who couldn't get a credit card because women couldn't get credit cards till 1974. And of course, we're going backwards again on those issues. But Lisa really, nobody exists out of their time. Nobody's struggles exist out of their time. What's the curse? May you live in interesting times. And so Lisa really painted very clearly what it was like to be a successful and strong woman in the 50s, the difficulties of that. And really, people often think of my mom as a nice little lady who played with puppets. Well, that was who she was on camera, but she was not a nice little lady that played with puppets. She was a strong, smart woman. She was a woman in a marriage. We all know that. I mean, I have a wonderful marriage, but it has taken me 4 to get there. She was a woman in a 40-year-long marriage, and that is not, nobody has a completely smooth sailing in 40 years. And so Lisa really told the truth about what a focused individual my mother was, and yet what a completely human person she was. She was not just what you saw on the screen.
Well, you anticipated my next question, which is, what about the private versus public persona? Did she ever seem to struggle with separating the public and the private. Lisa, from your vantage point, what do you think?
I think
She was able to juggle the two.
Yeah, I think what's inspiring about Shari, and it comes from that interview, is she just, she didn't seem to be somebody who was stuck in the past or stuck in her problems. It was all about life unfolding and really moving on and being the best you can be. And, I'm really bad with quotes, but, her husband was a seeker and she wasn't a seeker. She was a doer. And I think that that's what's inspiring. Is I try to think about Shari sometimes when I get stuck in my own world. Shari she just did what she needed to do. I think
one of my favorite sayings about that Mom used to say is, stop taking your emotional temperature. And by that, she meant, it is what it is. Move on. Stop wallowing. You don't need a safe room. Stop taking your emotional temperature.
And I also think Shari, she knew, like, through her puppets, she would say things like, you're not here to see me, you're here to see, Lamb Chop would say, you're not here to see Shari, you're here to see me. She would talk about her age, she would say a lot of things so that she knew what people were saying. And I think that was really interesting.
It's interesting that you say that, because as I recall, and I was kind of a transitional in terms of my age. We would see Shari Lewis on TV all the time. I was probably getting to the point as a young teenager where the TV programs were really in full flower. But I recall this. My impressions were that she took children seriously, that she didn't, through Lamb Chop and the other characters, didn't speak down to children. And if I recall correctly, when she was on TV, adults stayed in the room to watch.
Yes.
Am I casting it
You're
correctly?
100% right. Mom had a great deal of respect for children. She, the only firing offense on our show was someone saying, it's just for kids. She had a great deal of respect for children. And the difference between Mom and Mr. Rogers was like, you're perfect just the way you are. Mom did not. Mom was, you can do better. You can do this. Let me empower you. Existence is not enough. Achievement is what is expected. And she was so damn good that's why the adults stayed in the room. We never wrote our comedy aimed at little kids. We wrote it aimed at to encourage intelligence. And Mom was just so talented that it was very hard to take your eyes off of her when she was performing.
What do each of you consider to be Shari's greatest contribution to children's television? Because really, there was a big leap forward with her work. Was her inspiration drawn from the children that she entertained, or was it something from within her own persona, or a combination of both?
Lisa,
what do you think
on this?
Well, both her parents were teachers. So, I always say there'll never be another Shari Lewis because of the era that she came from. And, all her, she had great belief. She had such a unique way of teaching children. Because I think that was always her goal, was to entertain, but to also teach.
Mom created the term edutainment. And edutainment obviously is a combination of education and entertainment. But that goes back to my grandfather, who used magic to teach math and magic to teach behavior, because talking at someone information doesn't go into their brains just because you're talking at them. The best teacher my son ever had was Diane Stewart, his first grade teacher or kindergarten teacher, who referred to the class as her audience. And Diane was amazing. She entertained. And through that entertainment, the kids were engaged and enthusiastic about learning.
Mallory, what was it like working with your mother? And when did you decide to start performing with Lamb Chop? And what made you say, I want to continue my mother's legacy and take up the puppet?
I had spent my entire life working with my mom. I started ghostwriting her newspaper columns when I was, I don't know, 8, 10, something like that. I worked first as a writer on Lamb Chop's play along, then as a producer. I did all the editing, not fingers on the keyboard, but sitting behind the guy with the fingers on the keyboard. Shout out to you, John Christie. And when Mom died, my whole life had been about Lamb Chop, and it's been a great life, no complaints. But when Mom died, people were sending me letters saying, "Is Lamb Chop dead too?" And I couldn't lose my little sister and my mother. I'd already lost Mom. I was going to make sure my little sister stayed alive. And I believe it's what Mom would have wanted. We never planned me to take over Lamb Chop, but we never planned on Mom dying. I mean, she'd only be 90 now. And her life force is so strong that even though she's been dead for 26 years, her creation is a social media star with, by the way, over 400,000 followers. You had old information, young man. So, but I mean, Mom's life force is still out there, entertaining and making people happy and making people cry. And I believe that so much of what I get in the comment sections on both TikTok and Instagram are, thank you for keeping your mom's legacy alive. Thank you for making me feel safe, because I don't believe that the 50s were a safer time. I don't think it was an easier time, but I do think that many of Mom's viewers were 4 years old in the 50s. So of course it was a better time for them. It's easy to be 4. People feed you, they wash your clothes, you're not aware of world events. So, and same for the 90s kids. You know, the 90s weren't that great, but they were 4. So Lamb Chop brings people back to a time when they were 4. And I try to keep all of my content. I'm actually extremely political, but I try to keep all of my content safe in such a way that I think the world is a very disturbing place these days. And if I can give people 3 minutes a day that's funny and warm and takes them away from the terrors of the front page, then I am truly continuing offering people what Lamb Chop has always offered.
But the character and the message really are timeless.
Yes.
I mean, this is, if we take this from the 50s through today, there is nothing here that's dated.
Nope.
And I think that is very much the strength and the enduring strength of Shari Lewis and Mallory and Lamb Chop.
People will often say to me, because I do a nightclub routine, and people will often say to me, "Oh, your comedy's so much more contemporary than your mother's." I'm like, she has been dead 26 years. She would be doing these jokes now if she were alive now. I wrote for her then. I'm writing for her now. But it's funny when they go, "Wow, would your mother have done that joke?" And I go, "Yes, of course she would have. It's just this situation didn't exist then." But yeah, Lamb Chop is timeless, and I am just so grateful to Lisa for having created a timeless documentary so that my grandchildren can get to know my mother.
Well, that's maybe the most important part of this. Lisa, a couple more questions before we conclude. Can you discuss Shari's relationship with Lamb Chop as shown in the film? What should we be looking for here?
Well, Shari had a lot of puppets, but Lamb Chop was, I guess, her blessing and her curse. Like, I always wonder, what would have happened to Shari if there was no Lamb Chop? Would she have gone on to be the next Judy Garland? So I think Shari could have been anything she wanted to be, but people wanted Lamb Chop, and I think she embraced that. And, there were many years that Shari wasn't on television, though she was doing things. she always wanted to be on television, and she wasn't on television from the 60s to the 90s with maybe a show in between. So I think it was her blessing and her curse. And I mean, but Lamb Chop is so special. I mean, if you think about what Lamb Chop looks like, and also at the time, there were all these, it was very male dominated. The ventriloquism world and the puppetry world was very male dominated. And there's beautiful Shari with beautiful Lamb Chop. So it was such a special thing. I mean, Lamb Chop's such a simple puppet, but not really.
Let's not minimize that voice. It is. Who doesn't like the voice?
And let's not use the P word when she's in the room.
Okay.
Well, I want to get to the film because this is important. Where has the film been screened so far? How have audiences reacted? And have fans of Shari and Lamb Chop been reaching out to you? I mean, we talked about the 400,000 out there, but there's obviously a big audience of fans, millions of fans. So what's the reaction been like?
The film has almost sold out in every festival that it's been in. People love it. It's a different kind of film. It's a film that makes you feel positive.
We got fan favorite in DC, Smithsonian, which is great.
Yeah. And so it's everywhere it plays, it's doing really well. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's been a movie about Mr. Rogers that was out there very successful. There's a movie out about Jim Henson that's really successful. And Shari doesn't seem to have the notice. There's many people who don't know who Shari is or who don't feel her importance. And so I think that little by little, every festival, every interview, everybody who's seeing the film is starting to build our audience and our fan base. That's how I feel right now, except, I mean, people love the film, and it's in these times that are pretty dark right now. I mean, who couldn't use a little happiness? Like people, that's the difference between Love Gilda and Shari and Lamb Chop. Love Gilda, people were really, really sad at the end. Though this is the same ending, Shari passes away, there's a positiveness. People walk out, they're embraced by there's a connection to their childhood and a connection to happiness. So I think it's time, in these dark times, I would think that this would be a good movie to go out and see and recommend to your friends.
Coming to a film festival near you.
Yeah.
So Mallory, my last question is for you. What do you hope people will take away from this film? We just heard from Lisa about this. What will they take away from this film about your mother?
I think I think Lisa achieved this, but the one strongest takeaway is she was so much more than a nice little lady who played with puppets. She was a dancer, an actor, she conducted symphonies. She was a businesswoman. She was a wife. She was a mother. She was so focused on moving forward and on being positive that I think, as Lisa said, there are great life lessons. My mom used to say the day begins the night before, which means if you're doing a Zoom with B'nai B'rith, don't stay up late the night before. And she would say, it's amazing how lucky hardworking people are. And you don't get what you don't ask for. So there's a lot of wisdom in the film. There's a lot of humor in the film. There's good music in the film. And of course, there's the song that doesn't end. So no matter which Shari you knew, whether it was the high ponytail, the curls, the shag, the bob, the tight curls, the high ponytail with tight curls, no matter which Shari is your Shari, you will get to see her in Shari and Lamb Chop, the documentary.
And the Playboy Bunny Shari.
And the Playboy Bunny Shari.
Well, we're looking forward to it. You can find out more about Shari and Lamb Chop, directed by Lisa D'Appolito, at Shari and Lamb Chop, 2 words.com. Lisa, Mallory, as we conclude, I want to thank you both for talking with me today and for bringing Shari Lewis's truly beautiful story to life. It's great that you could be with us, and we wish you continuing success with the film.
Thank you. And follow us on TikTok and Instagram if you want to see Lamb Chop every day.
Thank you so much
Well,
for having us.
Thank you, Dan.
thanks for being with us. That's
Absolutely.
it for today's episode of Conversations with B'nai B'rith. Thank you to my guests, Lisa D'Appolito and Mallory Lewis, for joining us, and to you for tuning in to our show. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Share this episode with others. Post about it on social media, or leave us a comment or a rating. For all of our latest content, and if you haven't already, follow or subscribe to Conversations with B'nai B'rith wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook. Stay tuned for more exciting content in our next episode. Until then, for my guests, Lisa D'Appolito and Mallory Lewis, this is your host, Dan Mariaschin. Take care, everyone.